So a little bit about me. Well, you can read all this, but basically it says, well, I'll read it. Husband, father, Dvorak user. Sorry, I switched from QWERTY a while ago. I just graduated from being a student for like forever. And I can solve the Rubik's Cube one-handed. I like long walks on the beach, but I actually don't like the ocean. It scares me to death. And I'm a hobbyist board and card game designer, and I have a blast doing that. And I create things and I destroy things. So I like doing development and design and everything else, but I also do QA, which means I destroy things. So what is accessibility? I know it says it right there, and this is according to Wikipedia, but if anybody wants to speak up. Bueller. Or I could start picking on people who come in. But basically, accessibility, it refers to the design of products, devices, services, or environments for people with disabilities. So let's play a game. I need 2 volunteers, and yes, you get a prize with it. All right, I got 1. Okay. All right, come up. Let's see. What I want you to do is put these over your ears. But before you do, and I want you to cover your eyes with this. You are going to be blind. You are going to be deaf. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play this little game. Has anybody played Rory Story Cubes or know what they are? They come in a little bag like this. They have 9 dice in them. They've got a different symbol on each side. So really you've got 54 different symbols in each thing. So like here's a frowny face, here's a question mark, here's a shooting star, here's a key. Anyway, the idea is to promote creativity, especially with kids. My kids love playing with them, and so do I, which is why I brought them. But you essentially fabricate a story, and based off of the cubes. So you guys go ahead and put. I'm going to show what it's going to be, and then. Yeah, you guys just go ahead and sit in the front row because you guys need to be able to see it, sort of. And you'll be able to hear me when we're done, but you'll be able to see when we're done. Okay. And so the idea is they're going to be able to tell me what story I'm going to tell. So, and I just found this screenshot this morning, so I'm going to make up a story. Once upon a time, there was very small bacteria, an amoeba, just one of them. Anyway, he decided he wanted to go on a trip. And while he's on this trip, he went through the mountains and he saw very large animals. It scared him so bad that he had to climb higher and higher and higher so that he can be protected. Once he got there, he started fabricating an idea. Fabricating this idea where he's going to grow longer and longer. But it got to be really late, and he eventually just cashed in all that he did, and he won a prize. The end. So, no applause necessary. Okay. So go ahead. You can be unblinded. And, okay, so, wait, you stay blindfolded. Don't look at it yet. Okay.
I didn't see anything.
Okay, so based off of what you saw, do you think you could retell the story?
Oh, no, not really. Well, kind of. There was a germ that went through the mountains and saw an elephant that climbed up a ladder to get protection. started thinking about something, somehow a snake got involved, and, and then it got really late, and did something with the bag of money, or just the bag. So
Yeah.
he packed his things in mud.
Yeah, you know what, that's actually not too far off, but there are major story points that aren't there. But it kind of illustrates the point. Yeah. Oh, all right. So, Shane, go ahead and be unblindfolded. Okay. What kind of images were you thinking of, or that you could think of while you're hearing this story?
Just based on what you said, I could picture it. I probably pictured it a lot differently than everyone else that could see what you're looking at.
Right.
But definitely had a good version of it in my mind. Definitely no snakes or elephants.
So, how close were these to what you were thinking?
Pretty far off. Like, I didn't get a ladder in there. I mean, large animals. I didn't picture an elephant. Context. I don't live in Africa. Snake. Pictured a long Anita. Yeah. I don't know what the money bag had to do with it.
Yeah, that one I kind of had BS at the end anyway. So that's why you weren't that far off. So, but the point is, it was pretty difficult, wasn't it? Just to have only one, like just one of those senses not there. So, with those with disabilities, oh, here, you get to keep that T-shirt. If you want a different size, go out to Bluehost's table and you can trade it. And I've got one of these.
Sweet.
All right. Thank you, guys. So those that have disabilities, we just covered, that's just two different types of disabilities, which are visual and hearing. And there is actually a lot that fit under even just these two, or even a combination of them. And so making something accessible that's accessible for every single person that has disabilities is actually impossible. But, this kind of gives you an idea. So like cognitive, that's going to be like reading disabilities or comprehension. Those who have like ADHD, they would kind of fit underneath this category. Motor skills, that's going to be those who have like a hard time with the mouse. And also like quadriplegics and things like that. Man, this thing needs to be bigger. Hang on a second, guys. All right. Now, how can this apply to our web applications and our websites? Now, what I do I work at Bluehost, and I do quality assurance. So I try to make sure that things look good and that they work properly. Now, that being said, what are some, well, let me show you some numbers. Actually, my notes aren't showing up on here. This is sad. Okay, so I took this screenshot this morning, but it's showing the usage just for the year, so April of last year to April of this year, of all the different browsers. I combined Chrome. This is showing all but mobile, because mobile that's kind of its own ballpark and everything realm anyway. So taking into, well, this is what I want to show first is, here's the IE browsers. Now, how many of you actually do development specifically for the web? Okay. Now, how many of you make sure that your application or your website works for a non-current version of Internet Explorer? Any one of them? I know it's exciting stuff that's coming out now, but anyway, that comes to be roughly about 10% based off of these numbers. It's like 9.99%. Anybody want to take a guess of how many internet users actually have some form of disability? Want to take a guess, anybody? 3-4%? I heard something over here. Well, it's actually roughly about 20%. Now, how many of you, this is rhetorical, don't answer if you don't want to, how many of you are actually actively developing your applications or your websites for those with disabilities, making them accessible? I'd be willing to bet that more people are trying to make sure things work for Internet Explorer than what we are for accessibility. I know it's really sad, especially seeing these numbers. Oh, by the way, this website, webaim.org, fantastic. Tons and tons of resources related to accessibility and learning about it and how to apply it to your workflow and things like that. They also do workshops, which is great as well. But they kind of take a look at the different things as far as like the different accessibility laws and what the guidelines are, and they try to put it more in layman's terms so that it's easier to understand. So there are laws and there are protocols and procedures that are related. So there's the Americans with Disabilities Act. I can't remember what year that came out. And then there's the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So you'll see this a lot, Section 508. That should look familiar for anybody that's looked into accessibility. And there's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. Right now there's WCAG 2.0, and that's kind of one of the bars right now. And I don't know if anybody's looked at the spec for that. I don't know if anybody's religious, but I find like reading the Old Testament, like back to back, more interesting. So accessibility is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Not all is lost. And you can make a plan and you can start small. So, oh, my badge is falling apart. Sorry. So on WebAIM, they actually have some suggestions on how to get started. So become aware, because you're not going to do anything if you're not aware. And that's kind of what we're doing here, making you guys aware. And get your leaders involved. So the managers, the decision makers, get them involved. And then put policies and procedures in place. That is really big because you could say, well, we should do it. Everybody says we should do it, but how many people are actually doing it? I did see your hand, which is great. So kudos to you. So, especially while preparing for this presentation over the past few months, I've been pushing, from the QA perspective, pushing back on our developers. It's like, we need to be doing this more, and we need to be doing this more. But it's baby steps. So you can start now. Well, not now, unless you guys have your laptops, and you can start doing things now. So here is a solution to make things a little less painful. We can automate things, which is probably why you guys are here, since the title had the word CasperJS in it. So disclaimer, even though there are some great tools, this is not to fully replace manual testing. With automation, it'll cover a lot of things, but as far as making sure that everything's accessible, accessibility testing, a lot of it's subjective and it's related to your context. So kind of like what we were doing with the visual and hearing. You can still catch a lot of that stuff, but you're not going to be able to catch anything. Just the rules alone for alt text on images, there's a list of different situational rules for that, so which we're not going to cover because I don't want to bug you guys and make you fall asleep. So here's some different things that I've experimented with, and you guys can take a look at what I've got as far as on my GitHub repo for this. So there's CasperJS using custom modules, and I'm going to show you some code in a little bit here. And also SpookyJS. Now, who here has heard of CasperJS? If you went to the last talk, you should have. So, because that's what Derek covered. What about SpookyJS? Anybody? Okay. Excuse me. SpookyJS, essentially what it is it's just CasperJS. It's just where you can run it through Node. And that's important because these other cool tools that I'm going to show you, they are essentially they're run through Node.js. And I'll explain why that's important. So Casper, open source navigation, scripting, and testing utility. And here's some great things. This is actually taken right from their website. At Bluehost, we do a lot of navigational steps, filling out forms, clicking and following links. Like what Derek was talking about with checking the CDN and things like that. That's actually something I was helping him with. And checking hundreds of URLs and checking all the different resources on it, checking that manually, that would have taken very much time that we did not have. So it took me, I'm not a super fast scripter, but it took me about 2 work days to come up with the script and fine tune it to get it to the point of where we could just scan through all the different URLs that we could populate into it. But automating that makes things a lot easier. So here's some different things that you can do with it. And it's great if you just want to set it and let it run. It uses less resources than like running Selenium drivers. Kind of like what, sorry, I was overhearing your guys' conversation a little bit ago. But it's great, especially if you like running things directly from the command line and just be able to get a report back. It's great that way. So here's some cool accessibility testing tools. And I'm going to show you some things that I did with Pally specifically. And these are all great. So I suggest you guys take a look at these slides and check out these specifically. Ally and Pally, they both report things, but they are still very different. I actually really like how Ally reports things. I just couldn't get it to work how I wanted it to in time for this presentation. Actually, let me show you some things here. So a little interjection. So Ally is great, and that's actually with ones. It's kind of like the I-18N for internationalization. It's A11Y for accessibility. I haven't looked up the reasoning why it's that, but it's. So let's do openwest.org. Let's just take a look at it. And this is something you do an npm install it directly onto your machine or your server. So this is how the reporting works. Any errors like this, these elements are focusable but either invisible or obscured by another element. Descriptive, helpful. And then it'll tell you the hierarchy. So like this one, for example, since I can reach it, site footer, container, class, social customizer.social links.footer social links class. So it's using these selectors, RSS, and then A, which I'm guessing is an anchor. So an A tag. So it's telling you exactly where it's at. Very helpful, especially if you're trying to narrow things down. Now, let's take a look at Pally. Not as easy to read, but it's telling what guideline it's actually failing on, and like how many occurrences. So it's helpful if if you're more familiar with the law, or at least the guidelines. So that's just some things, and that's, as you can see, I was running that directly from the command line. All right. Okay, now back to this one. And Wave, how many of you have used Wave or have heard of it? The Wave, yeah, so those have done accessibility testing. This is probably one that you're going to be most familiar with. And that one's from WebAIM as well. That one's actually kind of neat. It'll basically take the site and it'll show you, like, point to different things and how, like how it's applying and how it's failing and doing well at. All right, so I came across this little problem. Casper. Trying to use Casper with these things is terrible. It's hard. Casper doesn't like to share. It's mean. And it's holding everything to itself. So basically with Casper it uses, by default, it uses Phantom stuff with using WebKit. And so it'll spin up its own instance of the browser, of a WebKit browser. And from there, it'll do everything that it needs to. And then when it's done, it shuts it down. It cleans it up. So if you're trying to do something with Pally, which is actually also built on PhantomJS, it's running its own separate instance. So if you're trying to share and communicate between the two of them, out of the box, it does not work. Just does not work. So you can either do things manually, which we'll jump to solution 2, since it's more along the flow. So with CasperJS, if you use SpookyJS, that's running it in Node, and then you can run run things like Pally and Alley, also in Node. And basically how it works is Spooky will take care of all the different processes. It'll manage all of that, and then you can essentially return a JSON object that you can spit to the next thing, and then it can use that data, which is way better than not. But the problem with SpookyJS is it's still relatively young as far as what's involved in it, or at least what's available in it. It doesn't support all the Casper methods, and on a daily basis, we're using the tester module as part of CasperJS. So, which you can look more into those just at casperjs.org. But asserting that things exist on the page and asserting that the form filled out properly and that you're returning what you're needing to, so you can actually check to see if there's a pass or fail. That's very important in our workflow, at least at Bluehost. And so when I beat my head against that for 3 days and couldn't quite figure out why it wasn't working, and then dug deeper into their GitHub issues and found that it's not supported, I was quite sad, to say the least. So there is potential there. It's just not ready for what we needed it to do, at least at Bluehost. But somebody could easily set up where they're just doing basic stuff like clicking through things and navigating to URLs, just having it managed through Spooky, and then spitting it through Alley and Pally and getting back the reports. So here, let me show you some of the code that we've got. Oh, that's tiny as well. Okay. Can you guys read this okay, or do I need to make it bigger? All right. So this is just something I'm going to run through Node. Excuse me. So what I'm doing, first line, I'm requiring in Pally. And also this next line, I'm bringing in this particular reports tool because by default, it just spits it out into a node object, which isn't very pretty. Sorry, not node, but JSON object. And so I've given it that variable called con so console, because it's a console.js. I've got this URL, which is just openwest.org, so don't strain to read it. And then using Pally, this is a specific method inside Pally called sniff. It's using HTML code sniffer, which is another link in my slides. And you can actually use that to check against different coding standards, and you can actually bring in custom ones. It's actually kind of cool. So from there, we've got the URL here, so assigning that key value here, and then running through this function. And using the handle result method inside of the console file, and passing in the results into that so it prettifies it. So let's take a look at it. So it's this one right here. Let's see. All right, so I didn't have to type in Pally and whatever. I just ran it right through this node file. And their documentation on how to do that is kind of, well, atrocious. So it took banging my head against that too. So if you want to get started with using Pally inside a node, I suggest taking a look at this, and I'll update it as I find things too. All right. It really was painful. All right, now the other solution, which this is what we're going to be using at Bluehost just because this gives us more flexibility with the tester module specifically. So let's see. Nope. So I've got this file called test1, and the mymods thing, I can remove that. That shouldn't have been in there. Okay. So this is very similar, and it's using, well, it's CasperJS here, but I'm requiring in that file called pad.js, which is where my custom code is, and I'll show you that just a second here. Then creating the Casper instance, starting it, and so I'm just starting with this URL up here. And then this is what I like about Casper. You just say start it, and you can give whatever you want. That could even be blank as far as the start. And then you can do Casper.then. So it's saying do this, then this, then this. So you can actually do things sequentially instead of asynchronously. And so inside this then function, which is going to do after it's done with the start function, we're going to run through an echo, which is very similar to like console.log. That's what you're going to have normally with JavaScript. And I'm just saying get the current URL and print it out onto the console. And then running through this custom method that's as part of that, the pad file, which is right here. So I tried documenting it so it doesn't look, so sorry that it looks terrible. It's a small screen, it's a small window, I swear. Okay. So I've got a few different functions in here. These particular ones, get element by selector and get selector attributes. These ones are these are particular functions that we're going to be doing pull requests to put into Casper, because these are ones that I think should be there that are not there. So that's why they're here. Whoa. Okay. But this is where we're needing the things. I commented this out because I'm trying to get the assert equals to work, but something weird was going on, and I didn't have time to debug it. So basically what it's doing is it's running through that, getting all the selectors, the image tags, and then it's going to get the attributes off of the image tags. So there are two different calls, two different things. And so I can actually print out, these are how many images have alt text, because that's one of the things with checking with accessibility is images need to have the alt attribute. Now, depending on the context of it, it can be empty, but it still needs to be there. So this is just saying images with alt text, so it's going to print it to the console. Show how many of them actually have alt tags, or sorry, alt text, out of how many. So let's take a look at it and let's run it. Let's see how well Openwest does. They've got 14 out of 14. Yay! So they're doing something right. Well, of course, they're doing a lot of things right. But so very simple, but I just dropped it right into this custom module. Now, there isn't. The reason why I'm doing this is there isn't any perfect solution. I wish that there was just something that, Casper had some already built-in accessibility modules and methods that you can just tap into and just say, test it for accessibility. But there isn't. Unfortunately not. There is not. So there is no perfect solution. So where do we take it from here? Because we're kind of at, as far as automated accessibility testing, it's still very young. There's, some things like Pally and Alley, and which are great. They're great tools, and you can utilize those for accessibility. But there isn't just automatically works out of the box. It's something that you have to kind of tinker with. So what we can do from here is, become aware. So kind of what we were talking about before. Let's get involved and just get started. So even if you're just doing little things, like the little alt text that we just went over, even if you're doing that, that's better than not doing it. And setting that up, this is included going through Casper's documentation. I think it took me 20 minutes to get something functional. And that was, like I said before, I am not a fast developer. My job right now is I do QA, and only about half of my job is even test automation. So I do a lot of clicking of the mouse. I'm a click monkey. So if I can do something like that, then those who are developers, you're going to be able to jump in and do things a lot more in depth than myself. But these are excellent projects that we can actually participate in and that we can make better, especially things like SpookyJS. If you're interested in CasperJS and getting it working and using it and utilizing it, this one seems to be ahead of the game as far as making Casper play with others better. So I encourage those that are concerned or at least interested to a degree of accessibility jumping in and contributing. So thank you. So this is my contact information. You can find me on Twitter @KurtGen, sending a direct message or following me, whatever. And this is my personal email address. Please don't spam me. And you can find the slides here. But are there any questions? Those that went to the last talk, I know that Derek, he went through a lot of stuff related to automated testing. So sorry if there's a repeat.
How does your testing automation work for Ajax? I'm not a QA, I'm a UX designer. But
Okay.
just wondering, we're required by a company that requires 508 compliance, so we're going through that right now. And Ajax is kind of a sticking point. We're trying to learn how to do that right for accessibility.
That is tricky. As far as how we're doing things, there really isn't a plan or procedure specifically for Ajax. But from what I understand with it, and I suggest taking a look at, doing your homework. WebAIM is actually a great resource, webaim.org. Yeah, I believe there's actually a section on there that goes over Ajax. And I think it goes into how easy is it to get to that information, like using a keyboard. Because navigating with a keyboard is huge. If you're relying on elements as far as like having to click on it to get to it, that's bad. So, because not everybody uses a mouse. Screen readers, for example, they have no concept of mouse. So, but as far as Ajax, yeah, I think it goes into context and being able to access it via the keyboard, if I remember correct. But there is stuff right on webaim.org that goes over that. A good question.
Is that something that you can automate?
I think you can, at least to a degree, because, well, if you have something set up to where you're taking a look at your content right on the website, like have that automated. With CasperJS, for example, you can actually set up events, so you can watch for certain things to be updated or certain things to appear, like wait for the existence or wait for a selector to appear, things like that. And once that does, then you can run the test on whatever that was that appeared. So it sounds like that is possible, as long as you have the rest of your stuff set up to be able to test it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right. You guys have been great. Thank you for the volunteers. Oh, before I forget, Bluehost is hiring. I was told that I need to tell you guys that. But we're looking for test automation engineers. We're looking for JavaScript developers, Perl developers. So we're growing, and we need good bodies, need good helpers. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll leave you to it. But thank you.